Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. Let's talk N64 today, the 4 most iconic and great games for the console. Now, the Mount Rushmore of Nintendo 64 games, if you will. Here are the parameters. Like Mount Rushmore, great presidents, these games have to be great, they have to be famous, they have to be iconic, and they have to be emblematic of the console. They can't just be your favorites, they can't just be my favorites. This is all about fun. You're welcome to put your most iconic in the comments here, but let's get to it. The Mount Rushmore of Nintendo 64 games. They have to be well known, they have to be great, and they have to be emblematic of the console. When you think of the Nintendo 64, what games immediately pop into your head that are also great? Thank you to Rob Farr for suggesting I continue my series on the Mount Rushmore of different gaming related subjects. I'm working on a PS1 video as well, and I'll do other consoles, but let's get to it. Now, the most obvious choice is Super Mario 64 that came out in 1996. Oh my gosh. Now, this was not the first 3D Mario game. That honor belongs to Mario Clash and Mario's Tennis from 1995 for the Virtual Boy. But it is the first 3D Mario game. Now, I spoke about this game and for the History Channel. I spoke about this game on a documentary, Nintendo Playing with Power, and it was great being on that. So this game means a lot to me. It's one of my favorites for the console. It's in the top 3. It's an amazing game. It was absolutely mind-blowing when it came out to see Mario as this fully realized 3D character, this interactive cartoon, if you will. It was the best-selling Nintendo 64 game. Like I said, it was the first, not only was it the first 3D Super Mario game, it really paved the way for this just absolute avalanche of 3D platformers that came out in its wake. It pioneered and popularized the 3D platformer. Mario was more versatile in this game than he was in previous games. He could climb, he could grab objects, he could punch, he could do special jumps. It had a hub world, Princess Peach's Castle. It was a non-linear game, which was really something back in the day. I mean, this was in an era when games were transitioning to 3D. There were more non-linear games coming out. Shigeru Miyamoto conceived it while creating Star Fox, the 3D game for the Super Nintendo. Thankfully, he brought Mario into 3D. I assume Mario would have been brought into full 3D in a Super Mario series eventually, but it happened here with Super Mario 64, which I argue is the most iconic game for the console. I mean, it just kind of goes without saying. All right, let's get to the 3 that were really hard to boil down, and I'll have a list of honorable mentions at the end, games that I heavily considered while putting this list together. Next up, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time from 1998. It was the first 3D Zelda game. They made it different. They wanted it to really stand out differently from Super Mario 64, so Link could not jump. There's obviously a lot of other differences in the game as well. It was heavily pre-ordered, this game. You could get a limited edition gold cartridge. You remember the ads? You snooze, you lose. This was guys, this is the most highly rated, most highly reviewed, most praised game in the history of the industry, according to the review aggregator on Metacritic. This game is universally praised, universally loved, and is absolutely synonymous with the Nintendo 64. The game really brought the Legend of Zelda series, the franchise, into the modern, late 1990s, into the cutting edge gaming culture of that time. It popularized such features as a target lock system and context sensitive buttons. It popularized these notions, and a lot of games had this moving forward. The game was hugely influential on the industry. It influenced Grand Theft Auto 3, which itself is one of the most revolutionary, most just iconic and most influential games of all time. GTA 3, it influenced Soul Reaver, Final Fantasy 15, and so many others. Ocarina of Time, another just absolutely, these two, Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, I had to include those. Let's get to number 3. All right, guys, number 3. Now, I'm not necessarily saying these have to be in this order, but whatever. My main thing was just to be the top 4 for the system, the most iconic choices, but I absolutely had to include GoldenEye 007 from 1997. This game was really perfectly suited for the Nintendo 64 with its 4-player action. It really helped, along with like Smash Brothers and several other games for the console, quite a few that really emphasized the fact that this was a 4-player console. And see there, where am I pointing? 4 inputs on the front there for controllers. Definitely a just maybe the console you think of when you think of 4-player gaming is the Nintendo 64. It's one of the all-time great movie-based games. There's a lot of really terrible movie-based games out there. For many people, GoldenEye 007 was their very first-person shooter. Now, not for me, being going back a ways and playing Doom and playing Dark Forces on my Mac. Quite a few first-person shooters before 007, but for a lot of younger people and for a lot of strictly console gamers, GoldenEye 007 was their first experience with this type of first-person shooter. Now, don't be pedantic on me. Don't tell me about Atari 2600 outer space first-person shooters. Not what we're talking about here. We're talking about first-person shooters as we know them largely today, like Call of Duty and Halo and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, GoldenEye 007, man, a huge influence and a major console game. It helped pioneer multiplayer console deathmatch, the 4-player stuff we love so much from Halo and all those games. It was the 3rd best-selling N64 game of all time, and it was a famous game with so many of you guys out there. I know you have super nostalgic memories of playing this game, all-night sessions, parties, tournaments either at your home or at retro gaming cons or retro gaming stores, wherever, professional tournaments where you might win some money. The game was remastered in 2023, but GoldenEye 007 will forever be associated with the Nintendo 64. Absolutely belongs on the Mount Rushmore of Nintendo 64 games. And if you feel differently, tell me in the comments. Now, guys, this 4th one was really hard to figure out because I just beat my head against the wall figuring out there were so many choices. There are so many great first-party games for the system in particular. I mean, Banjo-Kazooie, Mario Kart 64, Star Fox 64, so many great games, so many just legendary titles that are truly iconic and famous, well-known. But I had to go with Super Smash Bros. From 1999. When this game came out, it was absolutely startling to see Mario, Link, Samus, Donkey Kong, all these great Nintendo characters, all these iconic Nintendo characters, if you will, battling each other. Now, that doesn't seem too novel now. Other companies have done it. There's been a lot of Smash Brothers games. But back in 1999, when this came out, when the game was new in stores, people were like, seriously? Nintendo, the family-friendly, let's love each other and not say our characters are dead company? Let's not include blood in the first Mortal Kombat? They had Nintendo characters beating the snot out of each other. Now, it was unlike any game before it, unlike any fighting game before it. The physics were different. It was kind of floaty. The physics felt much different than Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and of course, it wasn't nearly as violent or bloody or anything like that. It's very cartoonish, very family-friendly, but they are beating the snot out of each other. Now, they knock each other off the screen as opposed to depleting their life bar. It's very whimsical, very fun, very just... Now, personally, I like real fighting games, no offense, like Soul Calibur, like Mortal Kombat, like Street Fighter 2, but I absolutely have no compunction with you guys for loving this game. It is a great game. It's obviously resonated with so many people, and yes, it's a real fighting game. People are beating the tar out of each other, and it's great competition. And one reason it's not one of my favorite games is because I'm not very good at it. I never mastered this game. I never got great at it. I think you have to be younger, maybe when it came out or whatever, but I don't know. I'm not great at it, but I try to be as objective as possible with these Mount Rushmores. I would have put Wave Race if I was just going by some of my favorite games. But anyway, Super Smash Brothers. Again, 4 players, what the system is known for. It's just emblematic. When you think of the Nintendo 64, you think of the first Smash Brothers game, Super Smash Brothers. That's one reason I put it on here, is because it was the first in the series, and there were a ton of sequels, you know, and copycats and everything, it was so much more influential than Banjo-Kazooie. And Mario Kart 64 was the second game in the series. Star Fox 64 was the second game in the series. So I had to give it to Super Smash Brothers. Now guys, I know there are other iconic games for the Nintendo 64, and I want you to let me know in the comments which ones you think should be on this list. Did you think I nailed it? And remember, iconic, famous, emblematic, and great. Those are your parameters. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Although there are no real wrong answers with this, you can put your favorite Nintendo 64 games if you want to. This is all just for fun. Having a great time here. Thank you guys so much for liking. Thank you for subscribing. And we will talk to you in another video. And keep an eye out for my upcoming Mount Rushmore of PlayStation 1 games. And again, thank you to Rob Farr for kind of nudging me in this direction to do more Mount Rushmore videos, because I really enjoy doing them. All right, guys, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you in another video.
It's me, Mario!